Thanks for tuning in to Proline TV for NASCAR coverage, if you couldn't tell, as we get ready for race number 2. That's right, we're already into race number 2 for the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season, Daytona 500 in the rear view. This is when we're going to preview the race. We're going to go over all the key drivers, the latest odds, and of course, our picks. CJ Wadoon joining us from RotoWire. CJ, how's it going?
Another week 2 of the season, like you said, ready to get going. Another super speedway race. It'll be a couple weeks before we find out what people really have, I guess, for the season.
Yeah. And another Daytona 500 that was delayed by rain. And I'm imagining that they started the race completely and 100% with an understanding that it was going to rain. But I think they wanted to start the race. This is my guess, because we've been down this road before, that they knew that there would be a certain group of people that would not be there when they came back to green later in the night. And they just, they had the crowd at a certain time of day, market-wise, and they wanted to start the Daytona 500 on national TV at a certain time of day. They got that. And then they knew that they were going to, because it was silly that you heard the announcers saying, well, it starts to rain earlier than they thought. I think stop the whole bullshit stuff. I know you got to do it, but everybody knew it was going to rain. Everybody knew that you weren't going to get much of this in. I was actually surprised they got any of it in, to tell you the truth. And then we had to wait until whatever it was, 7:00. What was that, like a 4-hour delay?
Yeah, I want to say it was about a 3.5-hour delay. I was expecting rain during the pace laps. Like you, I was surprised that they even got 10 laps in before they ended up having to park it initially. So, they can. We've been talking about the weather and their ability to handle the known rain situations for a long time, and for whatever reason, they still just don't get it.
And they had the controversy. Of course, I was able to talk about it on the qualifying, post-qualifying preview video that I did on Friday. I think it was right after the second duel ended. And there's all sorts of controversy, not only after what happened with the second duel, but it looks like every race this weekend at Daytona had some sort of a caution at the end of the final lap. And NASCAR did what they normally do, which is they pull the trigger very soon, almost too soon, because the second duel caution deal was like lightning fast. It was so ridiculous how quickly they pulled the trigger there. Couldn't you just wait like 2 seconds so that the race could end on the green? So they must have heard all of the people that were angry over it, because and this is typical NASCAR. So they finally decide to let them run without the caution coming out. And it was like a foregone conclusion anyway. It's like, we didn't care if you put the damn caution out on this one. We knew that Byron was going to win. So, I mean, just make sure if you do it again, just don't pull the trigger, because this inconsistency is driving us crazy.
It was pretty wild. Yeah, I think it was like 6 feet before the finish line on that second duel, they threw the caution, and it looked like Eric Jones won because he crossed the line first. But oh no, caution light came on 6 feet before, and Cindric happened to be ahead. But then when it got to William Byron, and I realized that they weren't throwing it, I wondered if William Byron actually knew that, because it appeared as though he was slowing down when he got to the trioval, and Reddick was catching him. And I was afraid that Byron was going to throw it away through not paying attention necessarily, or through inconsistency from NASCAR. But in the end, it ended up being exactly like you said. It was basically a foregone conclusion once those two made it through the crash.
Yeah, and then William Byron, just to show you how silly this is, William Byron won the Daytona 500, and Ryan Blaney is the points leader.
Yes.
Okay. So what does that tell you? So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they can do. We've been talking about it forever. It's just not good. Even when they get like a named driver to win, it's still just, it's like, yeah, but he didn't do anything. again, William Byron's just letting everybody wreck around him in these Daytona 500s, and he's just, I'm left. Okay, here I am. I mean, it was funny too, because like so many wrecks happen, and it's like, of all the drivers to be left over is the guy who won it last year. I mean, seriously. I mean, what are the odds that you couldn't have been anybody but William Byron to win a second Daytona 500? So, I don't know. Yeah. Well, we've got the Ambetter Health 400, and we did a lot of talk regarding super speedway racing and stats and trends. We're not going to go overboard on this show because we did it last week. So hopefully you were with us last week and had the opportunity to, learn along with us and going through all these stats. If you want to know more about it, you can check out the video. It's available in the library. A lot of it is still relevant. The odds are a little bit lower this week. So Ryan Blaney is currently the odds-on favorite right now at 8-1. Big surprise. So because Blaney should be the favorite, even though he's never won in Atlanta. So let's keep that in mind. And there's Joey Logano, and there's Austin Cindric. Pretty much you could say the top three drivers, odds-wise, are Penske drivers, and maybe as well they should be based on how they looked last week. And Kyle Busch is also in the mix, and a few other drivers. So yeah, so it looks like the odds are about what we expect. Blaney and Logano and Cindric, we could start with those three. As I said, Blaney's never won here. Logano's won twice. Cindric's never won here. I last week I already gave everybody a preview of what I was going to do this week, and I'm not changing my mind after what happened last week. So I said I was taking Austin Cindric this week, and I'm still holding to that. Hopefully, depending on what order we go, we'll see what Kyle does. CJ does if he goes with Austin Cindric or not, and blocks me from taking him. But anyway. What do you think about the three Penske drivers, CJ? And can you differentiate any of the three at all in this race?
Really hard to differentiate in this race because all three of them have been very good at this track. Even Cindric, who is probably the underperformer of the bunch at Atlanta last year, he still finished inside the top 10. He was fourth in the spring race. He was 10th in the fall race. Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, consistently inside the top 5. Kyle Busch, I don't know why he's up there where he is. Yeah, he's another top 5 contender at this type of track. But like last week, we didn't see, the dominance out of a Kyle Busch as we did from a Blaney or a Logano or even a Cindric. Those cars on super speedways absolutely, after last week, look to have the edge. Any one of them is a really great one to choose. I think Austin Cindric would be a fine choice. Joey Logano, just remember that he was the one that won in the fall race. So going back to back at the same track is always difficult in NASCAR, though William Byron did it with the Daytona 500. Ryan Blaney, like you said, could use a win here, hasn't gotten through. Cindric's never won, but I would say the three of them, I would probably rank them Blaney, Cindric, and Logano, and the only reason I'm putting Logano at the bottom of the bunch is because of the fact that he won in the fall.
Yeah, keep in mind Blaney, even though he's never won here, 5 out of the 6. And again, we're only talking about Atlanta since 2022. So remember that. That's when they had the change to the super speedway style of racing. So it's only 6 races. Chevy, interesting enough, has won 4 of the 6. Ford's got the other 2 wins. And just like Daytona last week, Toyota, no, you don't take Toyota this week. They have never won since the configuration change. Matter of fact, they just don't even like Atlanta, period. They haven't won in Atlanta since 2013. So, I mean, again, just like last week, not taking them. And if they win, well, okay, we'll get them next year then, or later this year. But I'll let them beat me first. Pole position doesn't matter much. We've had 3 winners started in the top 10. We've had 3 outside the top 10, including 12th, 18th, and 23rd. But as far as the Fords and these 3 drivers specifically, again, Blaney has 5 top 10s out of 6. But this is interesting because this shows you how strong he is, of course, on super speedways. He's led every race in those 6, including laps of 15, 20, 31, and 33. He has started every race in the top 6 except a pole. So expect that to happen. If he doesn't, then maybe that's a sign. If he has a bad qualifier, but I doubt it. Logano, meanwhile, has got the 2 wins, and he started 5 of the 6 races in the top 7. So both Logano and Blaney qualified really well here. Logano has a pole win, of course. He led 140 laps in 2023. Cindric, meanwhile, has 5 top 12s out of 6, including a couple top 5s. Last year, he was 4th in this race, led 32 laps, 10th in the second race, leading 92 laps. And that's why I'm going to make Cindric my top driver this week, actually. And I'll get a few extra, points along that decision there, since Blaney's 8 and Cindric's 11. As far as Kyle Busch, he has 4 top 10s and 6. Now, this is key. He has 4 top 10s, though, in his last 4 since driving a Chevy. So the first 2 races in 2022, he was driving a Toyota. As we just said, no good Toyota, Atlanta. So as soon as he switched to Chevy, all top 10s. And last year, 3rd in this race, led 28 laps. 7th in the second race, led 24 laps. So there you got Kyle Busch at 11-1. And his teammate, Austin Dillon, is way back. Where is Austin? Austin's about 40-1, I believe, or even higher, right? Where is Austin? Oh, he's 70-1. That's because Austin Dillon, even though he has a good career in Daytona, does not have a good career at Atlanta. He has never led a lap, never had a top 10 with an average of 25.5. Meanwhile, we go down this group here. Let's talk about the next team. Let's talk about Hendrick, CJ. You got Elliott, Byron, 12 and 13. Larson, again, ridiculously, is at 16. I don't know. Bowman, meanwhile, where's Bowman? Bowman's way back. Bowman should not be matter of fact, Bowman should be ahead of Kyle Larson in the odds. Okay. He's better at this than Larson. Larson 16-1, Bowman 25-1. So Byron's got 2 wins. Elliott has a win. Okay. Larson, as good as Hendrick has been here. Okay. That's another point to keep in mind. As good as Hendrick has been here. If you look at Larson's, history, whatever the hell I put it.
He crashed 5 out of 6.
There it is. 5 out of 6 times with an average of 29.8. And for some reason, he's 16-1.
Yeah, and by the way, we haven't talked about the Chevy yet that finished 1st and 2nd in both races at this track last year. So I think there's some values to be had as we move a little bit further down the odds here. Out of this bunch, winning back-to-back, again, it was unlikely that he was going to win the Daytona 500 back-to-back. It's even more unlikely that he's going to win the Daytona 500 twice and then go on and win back-to-back races to start off the season. He did win in Atlanta, and I'm talking about Byron, obviously. He did win in Atlanta in 2023, finished 9th in the fall race last year. I just don't think that he's going to top 10, yes. Fantasy play, yes. Is he going to win, though? Really difficult for him to do. Kyle Larson, as I said, crashed out 5 out of the last 6. He's just not the greatest super speedway driver. This is a home track for Chase Elliott, though. Is Georgia native, finished 8th in the fall race. He was 15th in the spring race. He won from pole back in 2022. So I think of the Hendrick guys, besides Bowman, Chase Elliott probably should be your top choice. None of the other 2 that we've got on the page here. Denny Hamlin, I would just write off any Toyota, because anybody who was paying attention to the Daytona 500 last week saw that they cannot get pushed or be pushed. Those cars, for whatever reason, and super speedways in the drafts just are not as stable as the Chevrolets and Fords, and that's going to make it really difficult for them to compete. And Denny Hamlin, actually, if you look at his record, it shows exactly that. He only had 1 top 10 since the configuration change on this track in 2022. 1 other top 15, the other 4 finishes have all been outside of the top 20.
Yeah. Not good for Toyota. Just scratch them off. And look, we said it last week and we'll just keep saying it. It's just, it doesn't make sense to try and break a trend like that. Just let them beat you. because it may be another 2 years before they beat you. 3 years. You have no idea how long this trend is going to continue, or it could end on Sunday. But let it end. Don't go chasing, because it's also not about chasing a Toyota. It's about chasing the specific driver of the Toyota. That makes it even harder. So why try doing that? Yeah. So overall, if you look at these Hendrick boys, so Byron, last year he did not really do much. 17th and 9th. Elliott also 15th and 8th. Their combined 2 laps led. So, but again, we know that they can win here, and Chevy has won here, so that makes them dangerous. We just told you about Larson. As far as Bowman, I still think Bowman is not a bad long shot, because again, Bowman has a history of winning races when you just don't expect it. And I think there are crazier scenarios to think of Bowman not being able to win this week. He has a couple top 10s. He has a top 5. And that top 5 was last year. Actually, I think it was the last race that he had here in Atlanta. And he was right there again on Sunday at the 500 until one of the big wrecks late occurred and knocked him out of it. All right, so that's Hendrick. You mentioned already. Might as well go ahead into the Joe Gibbs cars here. So Hamlin, 15-1. But as you highlighted with the Toyota fact, look, Hamlin was 23rd and 24th last year. And Denny Hamlin, remember we talked about this last week too. And this could apply to Blaney a little bit. But when we go back to Daytona in a few months, I'm going to repeat it again with Hamlin and Blaney, that they just they're in a bad way at Daytona. No matter what happens, they get involved with wrecks. And it's just a bad luck situation, even though Hamlin and Blaney could both have won the race on Sunday if it wasn't for wrecks. So, and Hamlin is going through the same situation here in Atlanta. It doesn't make any sense that Denny Hamlin cannot perform better than this at Atlanta. Meanwhile, Christopher Bell, he does have a couple of top 5s. You're getting a little bit better odds at 18-1, and he was 4th in one of the races last year, but he did not end up leading any laps. And then Chase Briscoe, he also has never had a top 10 in 6 races, and now he's with a new team that does not really do anything here anyway, and he has a 24.3 average. He crashed in both races last year. So, yeah, I see no reason to take a chance with any of these Toyotas from Joe Gibbs. If you had to take one of them, who would you take?
If I was forced to take any one of them, it'd probably be a coin toss between Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell, and I might give it to Christopher Bell only because the odds are paying a little bit better. Denny Hamlin is great on super speedways, but as we pointed out, being a Toyota driver with the cars that just can't push each other, they can't work with one another, they're very unstable. It's going to take a heck of a lot of luck for any of them to be able to get a top finish. So Christopher Bell, he was in there with a shout at the end of the Daytona 500 last week. But again, you saw the instability as he was getting pushed and ended up creating one of those crashes towards the end. So again, I agree. Avoid all of them. Maybe go with Christopher Bell or a Denny Hamlin, flip the coin.
What about Gibbs?
Gibbs, I would also avoid, again, because he doesn't have the same amount of experience. So I'd kind of put him in the same bucket as Christopher Bell. I'd probably put him ahead of Briscoe. I think Briscoe is going to have a harder time because it's his first time at this track in a Toyota. And like you said, he hasn't performed well at this track anyway. Gibbs is still coming up to speed, still has a ways to go. So from an odds perspective, yeah, he's a little bit nicer there, as you can see, than Bell. But I'd still probably go with Bell, to be honest with you. I don't want to. But Bell, I'd probably, if I had to, I'd take Bell.
Yeah, that is the only reason that I would probably take Gibbs against the rest of it, was just because of the odds. That's it.
But he's never won a race. Yeah,
no, he hasn't. But maybe that's one of those things. He hasn't won a race yet, so of course he's going to win a race on a super speedway.
Absolutely.
Last year he was 10th in this race, leading 37 laps, and he was 9th the year before that. So he does, for whatever, seem to do better in these races. The first Atlanta race in February than the second one. All right. I tell you what, since we're on Toyota, let's talk about a couple of the other Toyotas of interest at 23XI, and that is Bubba and Reddick. Bubba is sitting there at about 20-1, and Reddick is 25-1. Wallace was fifth in this race last year, so and he's always kind of around in these super speedways, so he's always dangerous. So that it's something to keep an eye on, and maybe one of the more interesting Toyotas to keep an eye on. Reddick, meanwhile, he does have a couple top 10s, top 5. He's getting some decent odds here at 25-1, 6th last year and 30th. But again, we're talking about Toyota.
Yeah, I think you've got to keep Wallace in mind whenever you're at super speedway, because he's very good at these tracks. He won his dual race at Daytona, ended up getting involved in a crash actually in the race on Sunday. But like you said, he had a 5th place in this race last year. That was his best finish at the track. Came back in the fall and finished 29th, and he hadn't finished inside the top 10 in any race at Atlanta, whether it's pre-configuration or post this configuration in his career either. So that one good spot within Atlanta might be something worth looking at. I don't know, might go with Reddick instead though. Reddick finished 6th in the fall race at Atlanta. He was 27th and 30th in the 2 races before, but then also had another 5th place finish back in 2023. So he's one of the Toyotas that is showing slightly more consistency in terms of being able to finish inside the top 10, top 5. So I think of the bunch, plus you're getting better odds, or of those 2, I should say, Tyler Reddick over Bubba Wallace. But Wallace, certainly keep in mind because it's a super speedway.
You've got Eric Jones, another Toyota at 45-1, and Riley Herbst at 70-1. Herbst hasn't raced yet in a Cup Series car, but he does have 3 top 10s and 2 top 5s and 6 Xfinity races at Atlanta. Jones, meanwhile, of course, we talked about before, almost winning duel number 2 at Daytona, and he was good at Daytona, so he was definitely a long shot to consider, because if you look at Jones overall, he's got 3 top 12s out of 6 in Atlanta. One of those are top 5. And last year, not very good. But again, he did not have a good year last year. So I'm willing to forgive last year's bad finishes. Interesting to note, though, he has never started in the top 20 at Atlanta. I mean, that's a big gap. So if for some reason he can come out and make the final qualifying stage, he's in that round 10 deal. I definitely, that would open my eyes. And I'm not sure how much you drop from 45-1. Maybe you drop to 25 or 30 if that happens, but I'm okay. Matter of fact, again, if you're looking at Toyotas, I'd rather look down here and throw a buck on guys like, I don't know, maybe Gibbs or especially Jones. I mean, Jones is probably the one, even over anybody else we've spoken about, that I'd probably invest a buck or 2 on. He's got a Daytona win, and he also has a very good record at Talladega that we talked about last week, and not so bad here. So again, it's maybe a good glimpse of what he might be able to do if he has a good qualifying session.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you're going to go Toyota, make sure you're going with the long shots. I think Eric Jones, like you said, is probably the best of the bunch, just because he was one of the few that was consistent throughout all the races at Daytona. For whatever reason, he's got a little bit better of a setup within his car that's able to make him work within the draft. We also know that prior to going to Toyota, he was always good in the draft, or pretty good in the draft in his career coming up as well. So definitely go with the long shots if you feel the need to take any Toyota. Eric Jones, like you said, probably one of the best of the bunch.
Okay, let's talk about a couple other Chevys that are a little bit hard to understand, and that is Daniel Suarez, Ross Chastain, the teammates here. Suarez 17, Chastain 22. And that's because, Suarez, it's just Atlanta. It's just something about Atlanta that is just specific for Daniel. I mean, because his record at even like Daytona, 1 top 10 out of 15, and he wrecked 10 times.
Yeah.
So it's Atlanta, and he has been fantastic here. He's a defending champ, been in the top 10, 5 out of 6, 4 of those top 5s, 2 of those runner-ups. So he's got 2 runner-ups and a win, and he's coming off a runner-up and a win last year, again, being a defending champ. Now he's led 9 laps in both races. So it wasn't like he dominated, but all right, he led 9 laps in both races. So his last 3 races are second, first, second. Chastain, meanwhile, at 22-1, he gets off to the really good start along with Suarez in 2022 with 2 runner-ups. But since then, he just has 1 top 10. That was the 7th last year, but he was also 13th last year. So I think since you're getting 22 on Chastain, I don't know about Suarez, but you can't ignore it. Even though, and look, here's the funny part. Daniel Suarez is 17-1, and Kyle Larson is 16-1.
It's pretty ridiculous. I don't know how you can. I don't know. To be honest with you, but we talked about it a couple of times last year. When Suarez is good at a track, he is consistently good at that track, and it doesn't matter like when he's racing there or what season it is. If he knows the track, he knows the track. In Atlanta, he knows the track. He finished second, first, and second in the last 3 races there, and started outside of the top 20 in all 3 of them. So Daniel Suarez knows how to get the job done in Atlanta. This place has treated him really well. I see no reason to think that it's going to treat him any differently this weekend as well. So Suarez is certainly at the top of my list. And then if you want to go a little bit deeper, I think Chastain is probably a good bet as well. Like you said, when this reprofiling happened, back-to-back second place finishes, those both coincided, though, with top 10 starts. So perhaps Chastain's one that you want to look at if he's able to start inside the top 10, top 12, top 15. Definitely probably put a little bit more weight on him. If he's more outside of the top 20, that's when his results here tend to be kind of bad, though he did have a 7th place finish in the spring here last year, despite starting 21st, so it's not impossible. But just based on the consistency of the 2, certainly Suarez, and then depending upon where Chastain finishes, I might throw him in there as well. Or I'm sorry, qualifies, I might throw him in as well.
Okay. So now we got Fords again, Keselowski and Buescher. Keselowski does have a runner-up. That was in 2023. He led several laps here, 68. He crashed in this race last year, 19th in the other race, so nothing really to speak of. And Buescher really, he hasn't had a great go of it. Does have a couple of top 10s, and he's led a few laps, but he's wrecked 3 times out of 6 and has an average of 22.5. So, yeah, I'm just going to pass on them this week.
Yeah, they failed to live up to expectations, I would say, last week. They had very fast cars, and we saw that through the duel. For whatever reason, couldn't execute during the race and be able to make it all the way to the end. Ryan Preece was very fast, but then also ended up on his roof yet again. Both of these drivers, both Buescher and Keselowski, I mean, a little bit more inconsistent when compared to, say, a Daniel Suarez as well. So for me, I would also pass on both of them. I think either one of them, probably more so Keselowski, could be a pretty decent fantasy play. Stock up your roster with Fords because we know that they're fast and we know that they can push each other really well, and Keselowski is good with that. But as far as winning the race go, I'm not sure either one of them is going to do it for me this week.
Okay, now we start getting a little bit further back with the long shots. So let's move it down to right about here. See, now this is where I was thinking Gilliland and Preece would be last week, right around this number. So, and the strange thing is again, I think Gilliland is better this week at Atlanta than Daytona. So Gilliland, even though he's never had a top 10, has led 58 laps. And last year, get this, in both races last year, he starts in the top 5, ends outside the top 25, but led 58 laps in this race last year. And then, Preece does not show anything. Again, I just, maybe if you want odds and whether or not he'll flip, that's something to keep an eye on. Other than that, I don't know what else I got. Ryan Preece, he should probably be 60 or 70-1 to tell you the truth. McDowell, though, is someone that is a live long shot. He's never won here. A couple top 10s, top 5s, he's led some laps. He was on the pole in if you look at the last 3 races, he's been on the pole in 2 of them. He's finished in the top 10 twice, top 5 once, and he's led 30 laps in one and 27 in the other. So, yes, I would definitely put Gilliland and McDowell in play. And I would also put Stenhouse in play because he's never won here. He's got a couple top tens. He's led some laps, and in his last 3 races, he's finished 14th, 6th, and 10th. And we know how good Stenhouse is in these races. So yes, and this group is a really good group for long shots. I'd go with I definitely put a few bucks on Gilliland, McDowell, and Stenhouse.
Yeah, I'm with you on Gilliland and McDowell. Gilliland with his 50-some laps led was exceptional. Very good for him. And as you said, he started inside the top 10 the last 3 races at Atlanta. All he's got to do, and led a bunch of laps. So all he's got to do is convert that into a finish, just avoid trouble, make it to the end, and he's going to be within contention. And I think the same thing is true for McDowell, despite the fact that he's changed teams. He's not with the same team where he had those poles last year, but he's still with a good super speedway team, and he's still a good super speedway racer. So I would definitely go with both of those as long shots. I'd probably lean personally a little bit more toward Gilliland, just based on those 50-some laps led, hoping that he makes it all the way to the finish. Stenhouse, for me, just still, and we saw it last week, just a little bit too aggressive in the draft. So it's kind of checkers or wreckers with him. I feel a little bit more confident with either McDowell or Gilliland.
Yeah, speaking of being aggressive in the draft, you can say what you want about Colt Custer and a couple of the mishaps there, but I think they were letting Joey off the hook a little bit too much. It's like, I think they've both deserved equal amount of criticism if you want to give it to them. I mean, really. I mean, Joey started it all. I know it wasn't his fault the first time. I get that. But still, it was his car. It started the mayhem. And then, again, he had the issue. And I think it was with Stenhouse, right? Was that one where Logano and Stenhouse basically decided, well, fuck you. And it blew up for everybody.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised or taken aback by the comments afterward and people definitively putting blame on one side or the other. To me, it looked very much like a racing incident that went on for probably about a quarter of the lap. Either one of them could have backed out of it at any time to be able to avoid the wreck. But by the time they got to that point on the backstretch, like you said, both of them had just decided at that point that they were done with each other. And that's what happens. So,
yeah. I hadn't really laid out a big expletive in a while, maybe because NASCAR has been dormant for 4 months. But when I don't know if it was that one, I forget which one it was that knocked Blaney out.
That was
it's the ones when Blaney's ahead and the issues happen behind him and yet take him out. It drives me nuts.
Yes,
it's like
a teammate nonetheless.
And a teammate, yes. It's like they have this ricochet effect against the wall that come back and clips his back before you can get past them. And it just, as soon as I saw it happen, I just laid it where it went out. I just could not believe that happened again. But that's Daytona. Okay. So Haley, now this is McDowell's new teammate. So he's 50-1, and he's not a bad idea either, because we know Haley can perform at super speedways. He has a couple of top 10s in his last 3 at Talladega. He's got a win at Daytona, and he's got 4 top 12s out of 6 with a 13.3 average in 6 races at Atlanta.
Yeah, 8th, 20th, and 12th in his last 3 Atlanta starts. The fall race, he started 29th and finished 12th. He's just got to get out there and lead some laps. I think also from a fantasy perspective, he's going to be one of those drivers that is priced pretty cheaply. So he's going to be an easy one to work in at the bottom of the roster. And we know how good he is on super speedways. And this team, like I said, same thing for McDowell. They're also very good on super speedways. So I think both of those guys are good choices.
More long shots. Berry just does not race well yet on super speedways, as we mentioned last week. Forget about him. LaJoy, though, again, similar to last week, let's just, even though you could put him in contention on a super speedway anywhere, Atlanta is the best place for LaJoy. He's got a 14-point average out of 6 races, 2 top 5s, 2 top 15s last year. You're getting 50-1 and going right back to AJ, like we talked about last week. No reason to deviate from AJ this week. He's only been in 2 cup races in Atlanta. That was last year. And he finished 3rd and 16th. By the way, his best starting position in either race was 19th. So another one to keep an eye on if he qualifies better. And in 4 Xfinity Series races in Atlanta, And AJ's average is 7.2, leading 114 combined laps with 2 top 5s. So again, we've got 2 more long shots to add to the list. That's 50-1.
Yeah, I think both are very good as well. Corey LaJoie in a part-time drive really punched above his weight a week ago at Daytona. And like you said, Atlanta is an even better place for him. Out of the last 4 races at this track, his best starting spot was 25th, and he only finished outside of the top 15 once. So Corey LaJoie certainly can get the job done at Atlanta. I just wonder, with AJ Allmendinger, while I like him a lot and would definitely recommend choosing him, I hope his engine stays underneath him this week. It was such an early exit last week, and I think he had a lot of potential that unfortunately fizzled out on him very early on.
And I don't really see many more long shots to go with. I think we've laid them all out for you. I mean, Gregson, unfortunately, has not performed well at Atlanta, which is kind of surprising. Matter of fact, he's wrecked 3 out of 6, had a suspension issue in the other. So he's only finished basically 2 races with an average of 31.0. He's left 684 laps out there that he has not been able to finish at Atlanta. Custer does have a top 10 out of 3 cup races. He crashed in another, finished 32nd in the other, and his Xfinity series history, he has 1 top 5 out of 4. Yeah, I mean, Custer was in contention last week. He just got into trouble there, and he is at 70-1. So out of all these others, Ty Dillon, Van Gisbergen, Nemechek's name came up late last week with all the chaos. Other than that, out of all these other drivers, I would probably say maybe Custer is another option.
I think Custer is an option. I think it'll be interesting. The deepest I would go would be Ty Dillon or John Hunter Nemechek. And the reason why is just because their names did come up last week. They were fast earlier in the race. They were fast in the middle of the race. Nemechek obviously got further into the race, still in contention. Ty Dillon's got to be able to navigate all those crashes to be able to make it to the end. But both of those cars' speed and their ability to race last week was pretty impressive. They were able to run toward the front of the field. So among all those deep long shots, those are probably the 2 deepest I would go with.
Okay, so let's go with our picks here. And I go first this week. You went first last week.
So you're correct. So I can't steal them.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a foregone conclusion. So who are you going to go with your top pick then?
Oh, I'm going Ryan Blaney without a doubt.
I'd like that. Okay. Pick number 2. And so this is going to be in that middle category. That's going to leave, let's see, Suarez, Chastain, and Bowman. And I'm going to go ahead. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to go ahead and take Bowman. Why not?
Then I'm going Suarez. How can you pass up second, first, and second in the last 3 races here?
I just did. But yeah, how can you? Absolutely. No question. Of course, I got Bowman as a sleeper that we talked about. If you want to find out about all of our predictions, our season predictions, who we like as sleepers, who we like to steal a win this year, drivers to keep an eye on all season long, that kind of stuff, check out the video that we'll put in the description of this video that we did about a month ago to preview the season. Okay, now super long shot. So let's see. There's a lot to choose from here. So which way do I go? I'll go with Gilliland.
That's good, because I was thinking I was going to go with McDowell.
Okay, there you go. And then the other long shots, again, as we said, you got LaJoie, you got AJ, you got Custer, you got Haley, you got Stenhouse. So there's a lot of long shots to choose from, and you might as well take advantage of them, even though you do not get the long shots at Atlanta like you do at Daytona. Imagine that. So we wish it was the other way around. Yeah, William Byron won the last 2, but you know what the deal is. So if you look at it, since 2022, there have been no long shot winners. Maybe, I guess you could consider Suarez a long shot winner last year. he was probably a long shot. I don't think he was down. I don't think he was around 17-1 last year.
No, he was probably 20s, I would say.
Yeah. So we'll see. But it is interesting that you don't really get the long shots at Atlanta like you do at Daytona. And maybe that's something to consider, as well as the decision to either go with or take our advice and not go with Toyotas this week, and just let them beat you. That's how I'm going to go. And whenever they do, then we'll reconsider. All right. So next week we get away from super speedway racing, and we're
all together.
Yeah. So it's Texas, and that is Circuit of the Americas. What do we remember about that? That's a road course. So
this road course finish where, if you're in contention, you're going to bump somebody out of your way in the last couple of corners there. It's always a famous place for that. The last couple turns before they hit the front straight and the finish line are always exciting if they are within reach of one another.
Let's see if I have any notes on that. No, don't have it on that. Last year, the favorite at Texas last year was Reddick at 4-1.
You got Van Gisbergen this year as a full-time driver. You got AJ Allmendinger this year as a full-time driver. Both of those guys are going to have very narrow odds come next week, and both of them obviously have SVG now has experience at the track, but Allmendinger as well. So I think the shift from super speedway to road courses, we get a whole different set of drivers, though Allmendinger is present in both lists, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
All right, there you go. That'll do it for our coverage. Don't forget to check in on Saturday. I'm just guessing that's when they're going to have, I don't know what time that they're going to have practice and qualifying on Saturday. But Atlanta has the regular kind of deal with practice and qualifying. Nothing. Now we're back to the normal setup, right?
We are at the normal setup. Yep. Daytona's
okay.
One that goes special.
All right. So, I don't know. Whenever it is, I'll be on probably within an hour after qualifying ends and give you the post-qualifying report right here. That's why you want to make sure to subscribe. Also, liking the video, all that stuff. Leave comments, questions. That's the best way to support the channel at this moment of time. And that can help us to boost up our traffic. You can also check out Kevin Rogers, and his report is coming out, I believe, on Friday. So I know he's really into head-to-head. So we'll find out if he'll be able to give you some head-to-head matchup picks to keep an eye on. So look out for that. Again, Wednesdays right now, Fridays and Saturdays, we've got coverage for you at least 3 days a week here for NASCAR. And F1 will be picking up before you know it. We still have at least, another 5-6 weeks to go?
Probably, maybe 3 or 4, actually.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
Okay. So in a couple of weeks, at some point, we'll be doing our F1 season preview as we go in this big, long list of possible championship drivers to keep an eye on. It is a little bit better. Okay. I know. I don't want to slam F1 too much. It was probably the biggest parity season we've seen in a long time. So I give them that. And we'll talk more about F1 in a few weeks when we preview the season. So also check out CJ's RotoWire reports that will be coming out on Fridays, correct?
You got it. The preview for Atlanta we'll have up on Friday, and we'll have a link to that article at rotowire.com in the description area of this video.
And I will definitely place one for sure when we do the qualifying report or Kevin's report on Friday, since he'll be doing it the day before my qualifying report. You'll be able to get both the video and the link to check out CJ's RotoWire preview of Atlanta. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see everybody on this particular show next Wednesday when we preview the first road course of the season for 2025.